Hello and welcome back to another video podcast from Fantasy Football Scout, and today we are back talking about Championship Manager 0102 FPL. It is game week 6. We're going to take a look at game week 5, go through some of the teams, and then hopefully take some of your questions at the end. And I, of course, am joined by Luke. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. I'm over my panic about Man United's team sheet leak. My God.
Yeah,
That's scary stuff.
I saw the panic on Twitter. I saw you were thinking about taking Ruud van Nistelrooy out for a hit at one point, was it? That was crazy talk, surely. But you kept him in, right, and he got 2 goals, so that was decent. But who were you going to bring in? Rebrov, wasn't it?
It was going to be Rebrov, yeah, so it wouldn't have been made too much difference in the end, but obviously it would have been for -4, so in the end, the right move to keep him.
Yeah, decent. I've not worked out my points total, but I don't think it was very good. I was on a wild card just starting this week. And I did the classic FPL thing, started overthinking it, changing loads of players. My original team had Staunton, Radaby, both scored, ended up not having either of them. But that's the way it goes. But let's just jump straight in, I'd say, to looking at the teams. Unlike last time, because, basically we're not going to go through as if it's a bunch of new players. We're going to skip over any teams that aren't really interested or don't really have any player involvement and stuff that we don't need to talk about. So we'll start with the Arsenal-Leicester game. So that was 2-1. Obviously, Thierry Henry got a brace there. I think a few people were panicking about him at one point, but he did all right. Was there anything major there? I don't think there was too many changes, was there?
No, not really. For the game, I thought Arsenal might get a clean sheet. They're generally pretty solid at home. And Leicester not too great attackively away. So maybe a little bit of a letdown for anyone who's got an Arsenal defender. I know I have.
I've got 2.
Oh, have you? Okay. So slightly unfortunate, I think. I mean, I don't think I've seen the match stats from it. Let me just quickly look, actually. No, I've not got them anywhere. But I guess the headlines were that Seaman started again. It looks like he's now cemented that role. And at 5 million, I think he's probably the best keeper to get in the game if he's got it. He's essentially got a top 3 defense, or even a top 2 in most sims defense for 5 million. So yeah, I'm still surprised at that, because Wright nearly always beats him in nearly every sim I've had. But I guess it's his sim, so I'd strongly be looking at him. I certainly am, because I've got Bartes, so technically I could save 1 million there if I need to. In terms of the defence, there wasn't really anything unexpected. Luzhny came in for Lauren. That was what we thought would happen. Dixon can come in for him, but I think he had a slight knock. So it's not 100% that Luzhny has taken over, if that makes sense. And he was actually subbed off in this game as well. But I'd still back him ahead of Dixon slightly. I guess Van Bronckhorst again not getting a spot. However, he did play in the League Cup. They've released some stuff just in the last few hours. And they play rotated squads in the League Cup quite often. And Van Bronckhorst played on the left wing, where he's really good. And I think he got 2 assists, and he may even have been man of the match or got a high rating. So again, he's one to watch out for if he gets into the team. But with this new signing of Tikhonov, who seems to be cementing that left spot down, which is a surprise to me. I thought he'd be getting rotated. But in any case, he doesn't really seem to do that well. So yeah, it's just something to be aware of, I guess. And Inamoto coming in at centre mid. Jeffers and Kanu constantly rotate, but it's the man, Henry. I mean, he was obviously a great captain shout going into this game. And generally, even if he doesn't score or assist, he gets really high ratings because of his key contributions. So a solid captain for a lot of people there. There's not really much else to say about Arsenal.
Yeah, he did well. I put him in instead of Van Nistelrooy. In the end, it just evened out. The one thing about Seaman was interesting, because I think they played a cup game or a European game the game before, and people were a bit worried because he scored a 5, I think. But like you said, it looks like he's nailed, and he's 5 million. So I went for him. So obviously only 0.5 over those kind of 4.5. So yeah, decent. What about Leicester? Not too much of interest there, I would say.
No, there's barely anything to talk about with Leicester, in my opinion. I just don't like any of their players. Sturridge is a 5.5 striker who can, on some sims, do pretty well and be pretty good value. I have had him appear in the top sort of reaches of the goal-scoring charts before. So he's one to maybe watch out for, and he did score here. But aside from that, the only other person I really slightly like maybe is Joby Makhanoff. Actually gets quite good attributes in the game, and he can play up front. So he could be a reasonable shout, but Nah, they're not for me. I think we can skip them.
Yeah, we'll skip them. What about Aston Villa then? So Staunton started again, centre back this time, and scored as well. So 4 million. I don't think he's missed many games so far, and
He's missed none.
Exactly. That's pretty. It feels like Lundstrom levels. I was saying that I ignored him. It feels like that all over again, ignoring a 4 million.
It's very similar actually. It's very similar to that because nobody expected Lundstrom to play either, right? And I certainly didn't expect Staunton to play this many. The thing that's absolutely stunning to me here is this is one of the formations where Staunton does usually miss out in my sims. Basically, he competes with Wright for the left wing back spot. He almost never plays in the centre back position like that, especially ahead of Alpay, who is closest to one of the nailed on players across all the sims I've had. However, that's twice now that Staunton has started in that position ahead of Alpay. So, again, for 4 million and he's getting a goal, is shouting so loud that forget all the other sims. It's this sim we're playing, and he's playing. So there's still part of me that thinks he will eventually get dropped because he's quite old in the game, but I can't deny what's happening. I mean, the only other thing I would have note really in that match was the fact that Alpay came on the 73rd minute for Alan Wright. So what will have happened is Staunton will have almost certainly gone to left wing back, where him and Wright compete. And then Alpay's come in and got an 8 straight away in just 17 minutes. The reason being, he's basically got this key contributions. So he's got a key tackle and a key header. And I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter recently about posting stats that you normally associate with FPL, shots on target, stuff like that. But generally, outside of goals and assists, which dramatically can affect someone's rating, like someone can be on a 4 or a 5, but if they get a goal or an assist, suddenly it jumps straight up to a 7. It's basically key contributions that are the main thing that go towards a player's average rating. And Alpay's a good example here. You just got 2 key contributions in 17 minutes. So suddenly he's on an 8 straight away. It doesn't really matter that he only completed 4 passes. And you'll see that quite a lot. So Shearer, when we get onto him, he gets a lot of key headers, and that's why his average rating sometimes goes up despite him not scoring. Wing backs often do really well because they're pushed up, especially against teams who play 4-4-2. So basically, they're right up against the wingers who are usually set to dribble, and then they get lots of key tackles. So despite having attacking output in their locker, like Tarico, he's getting a lot of key tackles, which then bump his average rating up really high. So it's just something to notice. If we get these stats regularly, who's getting those key contributions rather than the volume does matter, but not total attempted. So it doesn't matter if you've got 70 passes attempted or what percent completion. It's how many passes of those were key that's important, I think.
Yeah, I noticed that for some of my players that didn't, like Tarico, I think got bonus points. I think Seaman did, even though he conceded. Robert got more bonus points than Solano, even though he only got an assist. Solano scored. So yeah, I haven't looked specifically at the key contributions, but I guess if that's what's playing a part, that's probably some of the reasons. So yeah, Tarico just seems ridiculous. I know we'll come on to Ipswich in a minute. Anything else from Villa? Do you think they'll keep this formation?
Villa are one of the teams that change formation quite a lot, actually. There's a lot of teams that play 1 or 2 formations, and there are some teams that play 3 or even 4, and Villa are one of those. So, no, I don't think they'll keep it. They do use this one in home games that they think they can win. This is their go-to at home when they think they can win, which obviously it worked out here. So this is their better formation, to be honest, that they play.
Cool. What about Sunderland? Skip over? Rubbish, right?
Yeah, pretty much. There's nothing really to say, is there? I mean, Kevin Phillips managed an 8 in this game, but they've been so poor. Arca didn't get played, which is a surprise. And Phillips basically got that 8 because he got 3 key contributions, as in 3 key headers. So that's the only reason he got the 8. That's it, really. There's nothing else to say about Sunderland.
Cool.
Avoid.
And this is an interesting match we'll come on to next. Everton, Blackburn. So we'll talk about Blackburn first here, because they only played 1 up front, but Grabby kept the place. And we only got a 6. So, I mean, at this point, I saw your tweet. You just think it's his sim, and there's no reason to jump off him at this point, I'd say.
Yeah, Blackburn have got 3 strikers in Janssen, Bent and Grabby. They're one of those teams I mentioned who actually can play 4 formations. And basically, in an away match, this is their go-to with 1 up top. They play it in the vast majority of their away games. So straight away, you're asking for your striker to, the AI to pick your striker out of the 3 that are available, which is a risk. However, in this sim, twice they've played this formation because it's twice they've played away, and Grabby's claimed it both times. So to me, he's usually the third pick. as a striker, hence his price is 5 million. You know, I've done like 20 sims, and out of those 20 sims, I think I found 2 where he played a good amount, and 1 where he played well and did very well, which it looks like we're on one of those sims because he's claimed it again. So I can't keep banging on the drum of saying Grabby's eventually going to get dropped, because at the moment he just appears to have nailed down that spot and he's first choice. You know, his performance of 6, if it was in the earlier weeks and he'd done this like before, would worry me a bit with the 2 others to come off the bench. But I think he's pretty much nailed it now. And like I say, in a lot of the home games, they will play with either 3 strikers or 2. So you strongly back him to play in those. And to be honest, you know, he's a 5 million striker away from home. You're probably going to consider him for the bench anyway. So right now, I think he's just a good pick all round. I mean, look how many goals he's got.
Yeah, you can't complain about that for that price. I saw, like, obviously Guy was quite popular as well, played a bit deeper, but I guess that's just an away thing, right?
It's just something you got to expect with Blackburn. So they occasionally will play a 4-4-2 or a flat 3-5-2 in away games they feel they can do better or win, or they've got confidence. Now, so there was a chance in this game, because Everton aren't particularly good, that they could have reverted to that, but they've gone to their go-to defensive setup. So bit of a worry if they're doing that against Everton. I would suspect there's not many teams in the league that they will change it for.
Okay, I have to keep monitoring that. Anything else for Blackburn, or we have a look at Everton quick?
No, there's nothing else from Blackburn, I don't think. Yeah, let's go Everton. Yeah, so Everton are another one of these teams that change formation a lot, like Villa. And this is their go-to home formation with 2 up top rather than the 1. Interesting, Kevin Campbell, who's also 5 million. So, you know, if Grabby was to suddenly lose his spot, he is an option at that price. Will play if he's the 1 up top most of the time. And then in this formation, he's kind of got like a 50-50 chance of starting. And then they play the other 2 quite a lot. But Max Moore got injured in this game and Kevin Campbell came on. Everton are not a great side in this. The headline really was that Unsworth missed out, the guy who's on penalties. He's probably in a few people's teams, which I guess is a bit unfortunate. And that's about it, really. I don't really like any of their options apart from Campbell and Unsworth.
Unsworth's 4 million, right? So he's just an easy swap to Staunton at this point, you'd imagine.
No, he's 4.5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, even better. You save 0.5 million, you get a player that's seemingly nailed on.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're on him.
All right, cool. So Everton and Blackburn. Let's look at Bolton and Spurs. So there was. We'll start with Spurs first, even though they were the away teams. There was a lot of kind of hype about Salakovic. I think that's how you pronounce him. What did you make of him and kind of Spurs in general? Obviously, he didn't do anything in this game. Got a 5 rating there.
No, this game was absolutely nailed on for goals, by the way. Bolton are terrible in defence, but can score quite a bit. And Tottenham pretty much exactly the same. They don't often score that many away from home. Their home attacks are much better than their away, but it's because it's Bolton. I mean, if there was any game this week that was an absolute surety of goals, it was this one. And we got that. Salakovic, he can play in centre midfield like he did here, which you really don't want him to. Because it's like I was saying before, those key contributions, players who play in that position, especially in the 3-5-2 like this, just do nothing. I mean, Lampard's an example. He's got really good stats in the game. He plays in that position for Chelsea. He can get goals and stuff, but because he plays that position, he basically does nothing. So as soon as I saw Salakovic was in this role, I didn't think he'd be getting many points. However, again, if you follow the arrows, they've got him. There's just no defence here. Spurs are away. They've got Salakovic going into number 10, Sheringham going up front as a 3, and then they've got Ziege and Anderton right pushed up as well. So you basically got Poyet holding down the midfield pretty much on his own, and then 3 centre-backs. So it's just, you know, they just don't care. They're just straight out going for goals, which is Spurs all over. But yeah, Salakovic, I don't really... I mean, I've got him in my team. I think for their run of fixtures, he's definitely worth a spin. I think he will come in as AMC most of the time, and he can even play in the front 2 if Everson gets dropped, who interestingly played a 6 in this game and got subbed. So there's a chance that, you know, Sheringham or Salakovic could fill that role next week. And I think he's actually played in the League Cup they've released, and he played as AMC, got a 9 and man of the match they've released in the last few hours. This is Salakovic. So as soon as he was in that role, he's looked decent again. So I wouldn't particularly worry about that. And I think he's worth a spin, personally.
Yeah, no need to knee-jerk him just yet. And like you said, they've got a pretty good run of fixtures. That's why I got him in. So, and obviously Rebrov did decent. I think you called that last week. I'm going to give you credit for it anyway. You definitely called it on Twitter. So yeah, he's come back in 10.5. I think he is 2 goals.
Yeah, did a pod for the Wolfpack and we all had to pick a player. I mean, it was a pretty obvious one, to be fair. The fixtures were fantastic, but Rebrov is one of these strikers who can be in the top 3 or 4 goal scorers come the end of the season. And he's basically their best striker who's generally nailed on. So, especially in home games like this week's coming up against Southampton, he's, arguably one of the best captains, if not the best for me, this week coming up.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll talk about premium strikers at the end because I know there's a lot of clamour towards getting 2 or 3. And what about Bolton? Anything interesting there, or is this a skip?
Yeah, it's pretty much a skip. I think Nolan at 4.5 actually got a goal, which I was shocked about. Again, playing in that centre mid role, that's very surprising. Apart from that, there's not much else to say about them. They're just, because they've lost Gardner, they've lost a lot of their attacking output.
Cool. Chelsea Charlton up next. I saw lots of Zola owners not too happy about this result. 4 goals and nothing for him, I don't think. But yeah, Chelsea looking pretty good. Good Johnson and Hasselbank getting on the score sheet.
Yeah, it's I think that's Chelsea's best team. Like they've literally picked the exact team I would pick if I wanted them to do well, and it was obviously for a home game against Charlton. So I was thinking there's going to be goals in this. Didn't expect them to concede 2, but scoring 4 was I was pretty confident of hitting something like that. The fact that Melchiot finally got dropped. Yeah, I mean, I've been calling he's going to get dropped at some point because he basically plays about 70% of games. And he played everyone in the league so far. And it just kept happening that his rotation would ever be when they go into Europe, he'd be dropping out, which I thought, yeah, there was a chance he might not play this one, and he didn't. So that's finally happened. Still think he's a great pick at 5 million because he can play that right wing back role.
Well, that's so. Few people asked about him, though. So you don't think it's worth dropping him? Because some people are looking. As James Nelson asked us a question. He said, "Is he a risky pick? And if we should get rid of him, who for?" But you think we should keep him? Do you?
I just think at 5 million, you're getting top 5 or 6 defender who can play in one of the best roles in this game, a right wing back. He can also play centre back, and he plays 70%. And he's very rarely going to be subbed on. As you can see here, they didn't use any of their subs at all. So there's not that many chances of a 1-point cameo. So it's just one of those guys who I think is worth it as long as you've got viable options on the bench. With people like Tarico and Dabizas who can do it in any game, I think he's still worth a spin, definitely. And it's similar to Stanic. You can end up with like 11 double figures for goals and assists. He's a 6.5 million midfielder. A lot of people haven't gone for him. And he could easily outscore all of the 6 million midfielders and below, and even some of the 8 million midfielders, in my opinion. It's just, whether he gets the game time and how different sims he can do, not as good as that. But he's certainly one who's got the potential to do really well. He's similar to Melchior in that way. Zola, I just want to touch on quickly. I mean, I called this at the start. Zola often starts the game pretty well, but then starts to drop off. And I've got his stats here. He made basically no key contributions at all. He had 1 shot on target, got a 7, and he had 1 key pass. So nothing compared to the rest of the guys. Considering he doesn't actually play up front in most of the games, I'm not sure he's that good of an option to go moving forward.
Okay, so maybe one to get rid of. Any particular options stand out to replace him with?
I think Boxic at 0.5 more is worth the outlay, to be honest with you. His goals are so important in this game for average rating, for points in fantasy, because they're obviously the most rewarded generally. So, yeah, Zola's not going to get anywhere near as many goals as Boxic, I wouldn't have thought.
Interesting. I think a lot of people will be interested in that because, there was a lot of complaining I saw yesterday with this game. What about Charlton? So a lot of people obviously had players left over from the double game week. And Yule's absolutely gone and smashed it. 2 goals, 9 rating. Really nice return there. So what about that? Do you think, are any of their players worth hanging on for longer? I know a lot of people just got stuck with them because they had other transfers to make. But Yule may be a decent option.
I mean, I think they've got reasonable bench options. I wouldn't worry about that. But Jason Yule is just a good pick, full stop. He's 7.5 million for a reason, because there's plenty of sims of. I mean, he can do bad. Charlton's occasionally just are totally shocking. Like you'll end up with 5 goals and they'll just be rooted to the bottom of the league. But occasionally they can do pretty well, and you will get anything up to even 20 goals in a season. And it looks like he's having one of those sims because he hasn't stopped scoring, to be honest with you. So he's another one that I'd consider just leaving in because he's their main man and he gets goals. The rest of them are just, as far as I see, are bench options. I still think Wilcox is slightly viable, but I just don't like having Charlton attackers really, if I can help it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I almost had McAllister who started again. Obviously, he's not really going to do much, but as a 4.5 million option. But yeah, Jason, I guess sometimes you just set and forget these cheap options.
Mm.
Job done. All right, we'll have a look at Derby and Newcastle. This is where my captain was. I captained Alan Shearer for this week. So I was glad he got his goal. But it was just one. Didn't match Henri, Ruud van Nistelrooy. Bellamy started, Robert and Solano again. Because I think you said that Robert is definitely nailed. Solano potentially not. But I think he started most of the games now as well, hasn't he? He's scored as well. So looking pretty good.
Yeah, indeed. We're doing Newcastle first, yeah?
Yeah, let's do Newcastle first.
Yeah, so I mean, 3-3 is a bit of a surprise. Newcastle are reasonably solid at home. They're definitely good offensively at home, and Derby are not particularly good attackively away. So I would have expected Derby to maybe score one. I think basically Newcastle averaged just under a goal conceded at home a game, and Derby averaged just under a goal scored away. So to see them score three was a big surprise. But anyway, apart from that, Newcastle, yeah, they've picked basically their main starting team here. I said before on the last video that Court will come in for Bellamy when he's fit most of the time, and Solano occasionally rotates with Gallivan, which is what happened. Gallivan came off the bench here, but Solano's played every game since he's come back from injury, and it looks like Solano's one of these erratic players in Sims who sometimes will get sold, sometimes won't get a look in for some reason, but then sometimes he'll get the spot and do really well. So it looks like he's got the spot and doing really well in this one. So I wouldn't worry about him anymore. I think he's a solid option. And Robert just does what he does. I mean, looked at the stats, he's pretty much the main guy here. He got a lot of passes in midfield. He got a lot of key contributions. Well, he didn't get that many key contributions. We got 2 key passes. He's obviously whipping in the crosses, and obviously when you got Alan Shearer up front, who I think he got 4. So he had 12 headers, 8-1, 4 key. So straight away, even if he didn't get that 9, he would have been on an 8 just from that alone, I think. And in home games, Shearer is a go-to, I would say, as a captain on quite a lot of teams. Well, it depends who they're playing, of course. But if they're at home against a team that's in the bottom half, then he's going to be a solid captain at 10 million.
Yeah, that's basically what I went for. It was a 1-2 with Robert and Shearer, so Robert got the assist, which was nice. But yeah, might look to downgrade if Solano's got that place because it's 2 million savings. So we'll see when we need the money. And what about, this is a funny one. Man United and Fulham. Again, we'll start with Man United. So Ruud van Nistelrooy comes through. Obviously, there's lots of worries about rotation, and then I ended up upgrading one of my defenders. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was actually Staunton because I got a bunch of money from making changes elsewhere, and I upgraded him to Mikael Silvestre. Came off in the 59th minute. I mean, I don't think he was injured or anything, so I guess that's just super unlucky, right? There's not much you can do about
that. I've got him as well, and I had Keown do that to me 2 weeks ago, come off on the 59th when they got a clean sheet. So I've had it twice in like 5 weeks where, as far as I'm concerned, I'm counting those points already. I mean, yeah, of note, if Man United are playing at home, I saw a lot of worry before this game where people are saying, oh, they're a rotated team. You don't bench Boamorte because, they could score against this team. I don't think it works like that in this game. If you're playing at Old Trafford, you're very unlikely to be getting anything out of it, regardless of who they're playing. It's like built into the game. The squad's just too high reputation. It's got too much determination. And, you can have wall work at centre back and still get a clean sheet. So I wasn't worried about that. Turns out I didn't get the clean sheet because of Silvestre, as we've already mentioned. But also, I don't know if you knew this, Andy, but they just released the League Cup games and the Europe games. And in Europe, Silvestre just got a 9 goal and might have been man of the match.
Come on. The thing is, I'm not going to be one of those guys that blames it, but I spoke to you, and I remember you saying, well, Silvestre's actually probably, because I was going to go for Neville or Blanc. And I mean, Blanc didn't even play, and Neville only got the clean sheet anyway. But you were saying, like, Silvestre's generally the best option. So even though he got 59 here, going forward, 59 minutes, not 59 points, of course. Going forward, he should still be a good option, especially if he's knocking in goals and man of the match performances in the cup.
Exactly. And usually it's Neville that will come off if anyone comes off rather than Silvestre. So it just happened that way in this game. But yeah, the panic of the rotation beforehand. Interestingly, on Woolwork, I went through 10 sims, and in 7 of them, he never played a single game. In 3 of them, he played exactly 1 game. And it was a game just after a Champions League on every single one. And he played at centre-back in all games. So when we released the news of Brown and Woolwork, we pretty much knew Blanc wouldn't be playing because Brown rarely plays any other position for centre-half as well. So we kind of worked that one out. But I think I got 10 out of the 11 on my predicted thing. I was worried about Van Nistelrooy, but I had him in prediction. And then Beckham, I wasn't sure whether he would play. But yet again, he's basically playing the DM role in this. Not that he's not a DM. Clearly, they just threw, like Tottenham, threw balls to the wall, just went for it, which they can do at home. But Beckham still chipped in with an assist. He just keeps plugging on.
Just one quick question, which apologies if this has been covered already. You might have said it in the last one, but obviously York has missed out here and Cole's played. He wasn't injured, was he? Is that just rotation that can happen because York's not as nailed as Van Nistelrooy?
Yeah, but to be honest, Van Nistelrooy often does miss out in these easy home games after a Champions League as well. That's why I was so worried he wouldn't play. Basically, their front two pairing is Nistelrooy and York. That's what's going to happen most of the game. On occasion, one of them will drop out.
Cool.
Or both.
I like that centre-back partnership, Brown and Woolwork. It's just like the old Vidic and Ferdinand. Very well remembered from Man United players. All right, let's quick. I mean, anything to say about Fulham? Obviously, Boa Morty was a bit of a bandwagon this week, but like you said, playing Man United, so probably shouldn't expect much. Anything from Fulham?
Fulham are just a good team at home for offence. They're not that great away. They can be okay away offensively, but not against Man United. John Collins played a 5, so there's a chance he won't play the next one, I would say. He was rotated the week before, so I'd keep an eye out for that. And Saha nowhere to be seen again, who didn't also play in the League Cup, which usually gets his chance in the League Cup, and he didn't even play in it. So I very doubtful he comes in anytime soon, unfortunately, because he is a good player in this game.
Yeah, I remember you saying last week, one to keep an eye on again, I guess. All right, Ipswich, Liverpool. Let's wax lyrical about Tarico. Get him, I think he got 2 bonus points, so 4 altogether, even though they conceded again. But yeah, anything to note from Ipswich? Looked like a pretty much standard team from what I saw.
Yeah, Tarico, again, I think he's the best 4.5 in the game. I was saying he's the best benched 4.5 to have because it doesn't matter who they play. Because often your bench 4.5, you're only really going to play them in those home games where they've got a good fixture. But with him, you don't need to worry. There's so many random benchings that if he comes on and it's against Liverpool, we can still get an 8, and he's shown it here. But I'd argue it's even better than that. It's better just playing him, because if he's getting an 8 every game and therefore getting like bonus points, then suddenly he's on 4 points. It's not far off just a player getting a clean sheet. You could pay for like Laurent Blanc, who generally doesn't get that high ratings, and he might get clean sheets in home games and get 6, but he probably doesn't get clean sheets away. Whereas you've got Tarico hitting 4 every week for 4.5. He's just better value. So I think he's just a great pick all round. He got so many key contributions in this game. Again, got two key tackles, and again it's because those wing backs are pushed up against the wingers of Liverpool. So basically, they're engaging the dribbling players all the time. So he would have been against Barnby and just been robbing him every time he got the ball, essentially. And that's why his rating got pushed up. And he hasn't really got. I think he's got 1 assist so far this season. Could have that wrong. I think it's 1, but I have had the same as I've said it before, where he gets into double figures. So expect his performances to go up, if anything.
Cool. And Liverpool look pretty normal. Obviously, like you said last week, they can get rotation up front, so that's always likely to happen. But yeah, anything to note there for Liverpool?
I mean, Heskey and Fowler seems to be their go-to up front now, in the absence of Owen. Lippmann's just more of the sub in and out guy, and he's been used a little bit more in Europe. So there's potentially value in Heskey, but there will be some rotation. But yeah, Biscam came in at centre midfield. Babel's now gone, by the way, to Bayern. I don't know if you saw today, so he won't be playing anymore. It's probably likely that Hegem will benefit from that. Biscam can cover there, but more often, in my experience, will play that centre mid role next to Gerrard or right wing, and Smeets are going over to the left, or Reese are going on the left. So yeah, it helps Biscan a bit, I guess, in terms of there's now another spot potentially you can play for a 5 million defender. And Hancho, who again, once he establishes his role as the centre back partner for Hippier, generally outscores him. And again, Hancho got an 8. He's outscored him, I think, every time they've played together now. So he is now the one to go to. I've got Hippier in my team because I wasn't sure Hancho would actually get that role. But now I'd much rather have Hancho, because once he's in there, his average rating is just generally always higher. So, if I get a luxury transfer at some point, that's probably one I'll make. But I think I'm a long way of having that opportunity to do that at the moment.
Fair enough. Let's look at Leeds next. So there's some questions on here, which I'm sure we're going to cover anyway. David Strom said, is Harte a concern now? So he missed out this week. I actually upgraded Radaby to Harte, which was a bit frustrating, but that's the way it goes sometimes. And then how bad was that McPhail injury? I don't know if we had any info on that, but he came off on the 46th minute. Obviously very popular because he's 5 million midfielder. So yeah, how are Leeds looking?
Yeah, well, first off, this game, I mean, Leeds, I think Hart owners got a little bit lucky here. I mean, I benched Hart because Leeds generally, for the top sides, their away defence is pretty bad. On average, they concede something like 1.8 or 1.9 goals away from home. So you were never really likely to get a clean sheet, especially against Middlesbrough, who are one of the better attacks in the game. So I actually benched him, and then obviously he didn't even play. So I was kind of hoping that 78% of the game would play him, and then obviously not get a clean sheet from him. But it just worked out that way. But no, I don't think he's a concern. I went through loads of sims of Leeds actually looking about how they rotate after Europe, and Hart played virtually every single one. I think it's just one of these freak occurrences. He'll be back, and I don't think he'll be getting rotated very often at all. He's one of the more nailed players in the game. Radaby, I think we mentioned him last week, is just a great value pick at 5 million. He doesn't score that many goals, but he got one in this game, just sod's law as you take him out. At Fail, I'm not sure about the injury. It's quite a key bit of information, really, because I think he's one of the best or most popular 5 million picks. So we'll see on that. I don't know the information there. And the thing I called out on Twitter actually was that they often rotate their front two, especially after Europe. And it's one of the reasons why Viduka. This is one of those things where Viduka, when you play the game, is fantastic. He's like so good, especially if you own him. He gets high average ratings, gets loads of goals. And he can do it when he's controlled by the AI quite a lot as well. However, I did notice that he does get benched quite a bit and sometimes won't play. So that's why I preferred Shearer, who is the opposite, really. You don't ever really buy him in the game or play him because he's quite old and he gets injury prone. But he's actually better when the AI control him than Viduka, in my opinion. So it's just a quirk that I've noticed. And this is the reason why he drops out for Smith, who does really well. And Smith's a really, really good player in this game. I don't know why he actually doesn't get played more often because he's got stats in all the right areas. I think he's got 20 for determination and work rate. So generally when he gets a game, he'll do everything he can to play really well. And straight away, he's got a 9 here. I wouldn't worry though moving forward. I think their go-to is going to be Keane and Viduka pretty much every game, unluckily for Smith. I still do think he's great.
Yeah, shame he's not playing more. I know the chat manager guys do a stream on Sunday. Is that just one they do a week, or do they do one before every game week?
I'm pretty sure they only do it on a Sunday.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure.
So I'd say they might tweet out if you want to follow their account any info about McPhail, then, so we can find out exactly how bad that injury is. I guess for 5 million, if you've got a playing squad, it might not be the end of the world just to bench him for a few weeks, but.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, there's 4.5 million options that are playing as well. I think Kincladze played as well again, didn't he, for Derby, and McAllister and stuff like that as well. So there's options there if you want to go down a bit in price. If we need to get rid of him, that is, we'll have to find out. And what about Middlesbrough? I think you called Boxic last week. He got one goal, I think it was. So that was pretty decent. Anything else of note for Middlesbrough?
My head's already big enough, so don't keep.
I'm going to give you the credit, so you don't have to say it. You see.
Box is just one of those players who's just, if when you're playing the game, you notice him right at the top all the time, and he scores a lot of goals usually for Middlesbrough. He started the season injured, otherwise I think he'd have been in a few more teams than he is currently. It was a reasonably tough game, but like I said, Leeds often concede up to 1 or 2 goals, so I thought he'd have a good chance of scoring, and he did. The fixtures are a bit mixed, but for me, you've got him, Boxic, Yule, and then people have got Zola. And if you're in around that area, I probably think Boxic is the go-to pick, to be honest with you. He does occasionally get rotated, and his condition sometimes lacks because he's quite old, but I think he's still worth a go. Greening, interestingly, played up front here. And Middlesbrough are actually a really hard team to nail down who they're going to play across sims, and the variety in their players is huge because they've got a lot of players like Greening who can play centre mid, right wing, or up front, and he generally plays. So where he's going to play affects other players. You've got Gordon, who is a defender but plays left wing most of the time, but then sometimes won't play because Johnston will play on the left, who can play left or right, and then Greening can come into right wing. Then you got Windass and Somerville, who occasionally Somerville will hit like 8 goals in a season playing in that centre mid role. So they're a bit, and they often sign some people. And they've got a guy called Martinelli who's played a few times, an Argentinian right winger who can also play centre mid. So they're just, depending on who gets the nod in the first few weeks, like we've said on a few of the pods now, generally then ends up being a good pick. So when you look at a player across 10, 15 sims, the variety is wild. There'll be terrible one sim and brilliant another. So it's very hard to nail down. You can say to someone, averagely he gets this amount, but it depends what sim we're playing for that player. So in this one, it looks like we've got one where Gordon is going to be playing the majority of the games on the left wing, and Johnson on the right, because that's happened quite a bit now. So therefore, they're both great options, I would say. And he got 2 assists, Johnston, at 7 million. So when you got Boxic and Johnston at 7 million, I mean, you could, for example, have Grabby at 5 million and then have Johnston in midfield, or you could have Boxic and then you could have McPhail in midfield. And I don't think there's necessarily a right answer there. It's going to be a bit about preference as to who's the better two, because that's something I'm looking at. I've currently got Johnston and I've got a 5 million striker. So at some point, I may look to revert that because generally the strikers are more consistent than the midfielders.
Yeah, which I think we'll come on to that at the end when we talk. I mean, we're going to talk more premiums, but that's the kind of thing that I see without knowing as much as you about this game. That seems to have been what I've noticed is, strikers are pretty decent. But we'll come on to that in just a sec. We'll do the last game before we do that. Southampton, West Ham. So 3-1 Southampton. Kevin Davis with 2 goals here. Any surprises really with this game? One to even talk about?
I mean, West Ham are just atrocious in defence. So there was always a chance Southampton would score a few goals. BT's generally favoured to Davies, but Davies has now played ahead of him a few times, and he's done well again. So I'd start to worry now with BT. I think he did come off the bench and get an assist though, so at least got some returns. But it looks like they're rotating Pahars, Beattie, and Davies, which usually it's just really Pahars and Beattie on most sims. The other mention is Svensson. Really, Svensson's doing what he does. He got an 8. I think he got an assist in this game. He's still a very, very solid pick at 6 million. You just know he's going to play every week, and he's always in the chance for baps and assists.
And what about the West Ham? Just rubbish.
Yeah, I mean Canute's having a solid sim. He can do this. I think he's scored maybe 3 or 4 goals now. He's a player who can occasionally get 5s and stuff like that. He's one of these people with like low determination, if I remember rightly. He's got some professionalism issues behind the scenes, but sometimes it just doesn't affect him and he just keeps scoring, which he seems to be doing. So yeah, he's another one actually to throw in that bracket, because I think he's 7.5, so he's still a good option. And apart from that, they replaced their keeper, Shaka Hislop, which if anyone's watching my videos before, I said that Shaka Hislop is generally awful, will eventually get replaced. Now, Bywater was their 4 million, but they then signed this guy in midweek who's actually got awful stats when I looked at him. So although it wasn't surprising that Hislop got dropped, it was pretty surprising he came in straight away. And it's a quirk you'll notice in the game when they sign a new player, even if they're not particularly good like this one, there's a very high chance they get thrown straight into the lineup, which has happened, I think, with pretty much every signing so far has gone straight into the lineup. So it's just something to note. Whether Phillips will stay there, as I think he might be a 4 million goalkeeper, not 100% on that, is another question. If he does, then I guess he's the one you want on your bench, but he ain't going to be getting.
Not expecting many points.
No, exactly. And if anything, I suspect he'll continue to rotate until James is back from injury anyway with the keepers now.
Fair enough. So maybe one to look at them, Phillips, but otherwise just leave West Ham alone because they're awful. We'll do a few questions, like some of the ones we've already covered a bunch. Like Grabby, you think he's probably going to keep his place. Selakovic, no worries about his rating of 5. But there was a few others. So 2 of the things that have come up, so there's FPL Chancer asked, do we need at least 2 premium strikers now, given how they're playing? And this is kind of tied in. So FPL Pep Talk said, there's so few clean sheets. Is that normal in CM 0102? And should we only ever be playing 3 at the back? So a premium striker is the way to go, and clean sheets, are they really a thing outside of the top teams?
Okay, for the premium strikers, I think it's certainly preferable to have 2. They're just, there's the bottom 3 or 4 sides in this game, Southampton, Bolton, Charlton, etc. And when you've got a premium striker at home to one of those teams, you're very close to nailed to getting solid returns, and you can get, there are sims where I've seen people get 4 or 5 goals in a game. So to have 2 of them that at least you can rotate is probably preferable. I mean, I think a lot of us have got Shearer and then a 13 million. I certainly have, and I think that's pretty
same
much
for me.
Blueprint. Yeah, so I wouldn't say move away from that. As for the third one, I certainly wouldn't argue with having a third one for the reasons I just said, if you can make it work elsewhere. However, there are these people, Boxic, Canute, Grabby. There are other options, and therefore you can spread that money around the rest of your team. So that's still my preferred go-to at the moment. But that could change. If we have more weeks like this, where with the big boys are just absolutely smashing it. But it's hard to judge because we've had a game where a lot of the big teams were playing in favourable games, really favourable games. So it's always going to look that way after a week like this. Suddenly when you have, Chelsea play Man United in a week, and or Chelsea play Newcastle, Man United play Newcastle, and you've got Van Nistelrooy versus Shearer, and they both get nothing. Suddenly it looks like the opposite, right? So, we'll have to see on that one, I guess. As for the defenders, that was pretty much known beforehand. I mean, the top three, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, are good for clean sheets. It's very hard to see clean sheets in this game because when you go to the stats at the end of a sim and you can break down all the teams, it doesn't actually tell you how many clean sheets the team got. So it will just tell you how many goals they conceded. So then if you want to see how many clean sheets they've got, you've got to go into their individual fixtures and count how many clean sheets they got. So it's a very, very
tedious process.
Yeah, exactly. Which I've done for quite a few teams. But as a blueprint, obviously, if you concede less goals, you're going to get more clean sheets, right? And the big three generally get them at home. Virtually no one gets them away. Occasionally they will, but home they will get them, and therefore they can be worth their money. However, there's just value in defence full stop. Like we've already discussed it, Tarico, Davies, these 4.5s, they can still get points in other ways. So I wouldn't necessarily say play three at the back. I'm playing 4 currently, and I kind of like that. I just think basically avoid midfield is the general rule. Not necessarily pumping funds into defence, but at least paying attention to who you're buying in defence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's like my non-expert view. That seems to be like if you like I've listened to a few different pods and streams, and in midfield there seems to be like a few different options, but no one's really sure about who the absolute best option is. Whereas up front, everyone's like, yeah, Henry, Nistelrooy, Shearer, etc. They just seem to be more consistent. So that's kind of how I set my team up. I just made my midfield a lot cheaper. I think that's actually all the questions, because every other question we pretty much covered. Who are you? Just one thing to finish off. Who are you looking at captaining this week?
Well, I'm very tempted just to take Van Nistelrooy out and put Rebrov in for my free transfer and captain Rebrov. I just think the chance of a haul against home Southampton is really high. Now, Van Nistelrooy could easily do it away to Sunderland because Man United are one of those teams that kind of ignore the home and away largely, and they can score away. But it's the fixture after that as well, where Man United then play home to Liverpool, where he could do all right. But Rebrov has again got another great game. I think it's home to Fulham, maybe?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah. So that, to me, over 2 games, over those 2, I would expect Rebrov to outscore him for less money. So if I do that, I can then play around with the rest of my team a bit. Ultimately, I want him back, though. So it's essentially 2 transfers when you look at it that way to chance that he scores more. But that's my plan at the moment, unless, we get any more news.
Yeah, cool. I actually looked at that fixture then and was wondering if I should go Selakovic or whether that's too much of a risk for captaincy. I'm trying to play catch up, so I'm thinking outside the box a bit. Otherwise, I think I might just go Shearer, Charlton away potentially, or Henry, West Ham away. So we'll see. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. I don't know if we'll do one for Game Week 7. We'll have to see. If not, I'm sure we'll be back at some point to do another one. So yeah, get your questions and stuff in. Thanks very much for joining me, Luke.
No problem. It was a pleasure.
Cool, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that normal stuff for YouTube. And if you're listening along on podcasts, hopefully you enjoyed it, and we will catch you soon. Cheers.
See ya.